Have you ever stopped to think that you might be making mistakes that you don't even realize you're making? Mistakes that are weighing on your life without you knowing exactly why you are feeling so much pain. What if I told you that these mistakes could be the reason why your peace is far away, even when you try to seek it? Are you really trusting the right people? Or are you pinning your hopes on something that deep down will never fulfill you? And most importantly, have you truly forgiven yourself? Or are you carrying around a burden that has imprisoned you? Today, I'm going to reveal 3 serious mistakes that many people make without even realizing it. Mistakes that affect your soul, your peace, and your happiness. More importantly, I'm going to show you how to correct these mistakes and find true peace, the kind that comes from within, and nothing can take it away. Stay with me to the end, for the transformation begins now. You know, many times in our lives, we carry burdens that we don't even realize, invisible burdens that accumulate little by little, like stones carelessly placed in our path. You may not even know where you started, but one day when you look inside, you realize that your soul is overburdened for no clear reason, with no specific weight. It's as if you're walking, but something inside you is still preventing you from moving forward easily. These burdens can come in many forms, from bad decisions, unspoken words, broken promises, or even situations that were beyond your control, but somehow are still there, in your memory, in your mind, and even in your body. A dirty look, an unresolved argument, or a mistake made in the past that was so big it was kept deep in your heart. You may not realize it, but these mistakes are weighing on you in subtle ways, influencing your actions, your feelings, and even your view of the world. Have you ever asked yourself, what am I still carrying? It's a simple question, but one that can change your day, because the answer is often in the things you avoid looking at. We often want to move on, but we can't because something is stuck inside us. And it's not always something big or out in the open. It could be the detail you haven't resolved, the wound you haven't treated, the disappointment you've never quite gotten over. The problem is that without realizing it, these burdens affect our hearts. You know that moment when things start to weigh more heavily than usual, when you feel like life is asking you to stop and look at what's stored inside. The anger over a past mistake, the fear of being judged, the suffering over something that happened but you still haven't managed to forgive, it's all there, without you being aware of how much it affects your daily life. And what happens? Your energy, your focus, even your joy is drained. Without realizing it, you become more reactive, more tired, more closed off to the good things life has to offer. The energy that could be used to grow, to love, to serve, is lost trying to carry this invisible weight. This weight, dear one, does not belong to God. He doesn't ask you to carry what has already passed, let alone what is beyond your control. Often what we need to do is not hold on to the stones, but realize that we can let them fall. The first step toward peace is recognizing what we are carrying and understanding that we can choose to let it go. This is where true liberation begins. The weight you carry is often rooted in what you believe is necessary for your well-being. The belief that you need to keep certain things, that you need to carry what others have done to you, or even what you have done, as a form of punishment. True peace comes when you decide that you no longer need to carry these burdens, when you allow yourself to live free, without the need to carry what no longer serves you. And when we talk about liberation, we're not just talking about solving big problems or healing deep hurts. Sometimes it's something simple that still weighs you down. Something like an unresolved misunderstanding, a gesture that was misinterpreted, or even a self-critical thought that you have allowed to grow unchecked. What I want you to understand is that there is a way to change all of this. Drop the weight that isn't yours, and take the first step toward a lighter life, more connected to what really matters. You don't have to continue to carry what weighs you down. Release what no longer serves you, and prepare your heart for what is new. Sometimes this process can be subtle, an inner realization that what you have been holding on to no longer makes sense. As you do this, you begin to feel a lightness, as if the air around you is clearer, cleaner. But what are you really holding on to? Are you willing to look inside and see what needs to be released? The answer is there, right in front of you. and with it, a more peaceful path awaits you. You just have to make the choice to let go, and by looking at what's inside of you, you may realize something deeper that needs to be acknowledged, something that has already been said, something that you already know, but that still prevents you from moving freely. This weight often comes from a deeper, more subtle place, like the seed of a mistake that, if left untreated, will grow and take hold. And that's what we're going to talk about next. What's controlling your soul, and why it's time to release what's holding you back from moving forward with the true peace you deserve. I know it can be hard to accept, but often what keeps us from moving forward in life is not outside of us, but within our own hearts. Pride, that silent force, often controls our actions without our even realizing it. It disguises itself as confidence, as protection, but in reality, it is what keeps us from what really matters: humility, love, and true peace. Pride is one of the most subtle traps we can fall into because it makes us believe that we are always right, that we don't need help, or that we should always be superior to others. It sneaks up on us, sometimes in thoughts we quietly say to ourselves, "I know what's best for me," or "I don't need anyone to tell me what to do." And then, without meaning to, we shut ourselves off. We distance ourselves from others, isolate ourselves, and become hostages to our own limited vision. But have you ever stopped to think about how this affects your inner peace? For pride will never bring us peace. On the contrary, it creates a wall, a barrier that separates us from what really matters. It creates the illusion that we are independent and self-sufficient, but in reality it prevents us from being vulnerable and connecting wholeheartedly with others. And in doing so, it also separates us from God. Imagine for a moment that pride is like a heavy garment that you put on every day. At first it may seem comfortable, even necessary, but over time it begins to suffocate you. You can no longer breathe freely. You can't be who you really are because you're more concerned with maintaining this facade of invulnerability, that everything is under control. That's what pride does. It prevents you from seeing yourself clearly. The truth is that pride prevents us from seeing our own fragility. It prevents us from seeing that we are human, subject to mistakes and failures and limitations. And that's the greatest liberation you can experience. Understanding that being humble is not being weak, but rather recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that we need each other. We need God. We need love. We need forgiveness. And here's the key. Pride does not allow forgiveness. It tells you that you are right and that the other person is to blame. It says that the pain you feel is justified, that you are right to hold a grudge. But forgiveness is not about the other person, it's about you. When you choose to forgive, you choose to let go of pride and embrace freedom. Forgiveness frees your soul because when you forgive, you say, "I don't have to carry this burden. I choose to live free of hurt, resentment, and bitterness." How often in our lives do we let pride dictate the course of our relationships? How often do we avoid apologizing because we're afraid to show that we're wrong? Or in other situations, do we feel superior to others, thereby distancing ourselves from those we truly love? Pride blinds us, and without realizing it, it puts distance between us and what matters most. Real love, real connection with others. But there is something inside of you that already knows this. You know in your heart that pride is not the answer. You know that humility is the key to true peace, and this isn't a new idea. When God calls us to humility, He is offering us the opportunity to experience a peace that nothing in the world can take away. Humility doesn't mean diminishing yourself. It doesn't mean hiding. On the contrary, it is the way to true strength. When you become humble, you become open, vulnerable, willing to learn and grow. Humility allows you to approach others without fear of being judged. It allows you to receive God's love fully because you open yourself to Him without reservation, without the need to protect yourself. So it's time to reflect. What has pride done to you? Has it kept you from growing? Has it kept you away from the people you love? Has it kept you from God? This is the moment to realize that you no longer need to hide behind that wall. You can choose to be light, to be true, to be free. When you let go of pride, you free yourself from an invisible prison. Life begins to flow more naturally. You become more receptive to love and forgiveness and find a path to reconciliation, both with others and with yourself. But it is not an easy journey. Pride has deep roots, and sometimes it can come back to haunt us. But the good news is that whenever you find yourself giving into it again, you can choose to channel that energy into something more positive. Choose to be humble, choose to open your heart, choose to forgive, choose to be vulnerable. And as you allow yourself to do that, you begin to notice something strange. It's as if your heart is opening to something new, something light, something real. And then you realize that the weight you've been carrying wasn't necessary. You begin to walk lighter, freer, as if the path ahead is clearer. Now think about this. Are you letting your pride control you? Or are you willing to let go and walk toward peace? Trust is one of the basic foundations of our inner peace. That's why it's important to stop and think. Where do you put your trust? Have you ever stopped to think about what you're giving your energy, your emotions, and even your faith to? Are you trusting in the right things? Or are you leaning on pillars that deep down are weak and fleeting? We often put our trust in material things, in possessions, in status, in appearances. We think that the possession of certain things, the attainment of a position, or the approval of other people will give us the security we so desperately seek. But the truth is that material things, however much they give us moments of pleasure, will never give us true peace. They are unstable, fleeting, and can be snatched away in an instant. Think about when you have a major accomplishment. At first it feels good. You feel in control, that you finally have what you wanted. But then over time you realize that this feeling of fulfillment is short-lived. What happened? Did you realize that what you were so desperate for didn't fill the void you were feeling? That's because true security does not come from the outside. It comes from within, from a confidence that transcends earthly things, from something beyond what the eye can see. The problem with putting our trust in the wrong things is that when they fail, we feel devastated. This is because deep down we were expecting them to fill a place that only God can fill. I invite you to think, how many times have you felt this frustration? How many times have you put your trust in something that didn't work out or was taken away without warning? The pain of this loss comes not only from the object or situation itself, but from the expectations we create around it. Think about it. Have you put your trust in people who can fail? Or in your own ability to control everything around you? Believe me, the problem is not in trusting people or their abilities. The mistake is in believing that these things are enough to guarantee your peace. People fail, lives change, and what seemed right can fall apart. And that's not a flaw in life, it's just the impermanence of the things of this world. Nothing material is eternal, so it cannot be the basis of your peace. But there is one trust that never fails, that is never lost, and that confidence is in God. God is the only true source of security. He never fails. He does not forsake us. He is the unchanging and secure foundation on which our soul can rest without fear, without uncertainty. When you put your trust in God, you are no longer depending on circumstances or the approval of others. You are leaning on something that is eternal and beyond human control. I know it can be hard to make this transition. It can be hard to trust in something we can't see with our eyes, something that is often invisible. But what God has taught us throughout our journey is that true trust is trust that goes beyond reason. It's trusting with your heart, with the certainty that He is taking care of every detail of your life, even when things don't seem to be going. Well, trusting God doesn't mean remaining passive in the face of life, waiting for everything to happen by magic. No, it means acting wisely, making the right choices, and at the same time, resting in the fact that God is guiding your path. He is with you every step of the way, even when you don't understand what is happening around you. He won't let you down. And when you feel this confidence, something powerful happens. Peace begins to enter your life. When you put your trust in God, you also find the strength to deal with life's adversities. No matter what happens, you know that you are supported by a greater power, a power that cannot be touched, that cannot be corrupted. And that brings immense relief, because you realize that you're not alone, that you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your back. Trusting in God changes the way you look at challenges. They are no longer seen as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for growth, for learning, because you know that no matter what happens, He will be by your side, guiding and caring for you. And with that certainty, life becomes easier. The fear of losing control diminishes because you know you don't have to control everything. He takes care of everything, but true trust in God also requires something of you: surrender. An act of faith in which you say, "I trust, Lord. I trust that you have the best for me. Even if I don't understand what's going on, I trust." This is not a surrender of weakness, but a recognition of strength. A strength that comes from God, that is infinite, that is eternal. Trust in God is the foundation of a peaceful life, even in the midst of storms. And today, you can choose where to put your trust. You can choose to put your trust in things that fail, or you can choose to put your trust in the Creator who never fails, who never forsakes you. Now think for a moment. Where have you put your trust? Is it in the wrong things? Is it in people? In material goods or in your own strength? Or are you willing to put your trust in the only one who can truly support you? The answer to this question will change the way you look at the future. Forgiveness is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It's not about the other person. It's not about what they did or didn't do. Forgiveness is first and foremost a gift you give to yourself so that your soul can be freed from the chains of the past and move freely into the future. Many people carry hurts and resentments for so long without realizing that they are unnecessarily trapped in a cycle of pain. But have you ever asked yourself, am I the one who needs to forgive myself? It's strange because we often spend so much time focusing on forgiving others, trying to understand other people's faults and mistakes, that we forget that the deepest forgiveness we can offer is the one that comes from within. Forgiveness for our own faults, our own mistakes, the choices we have made that have led us away from what we want for our lives. Many people find it hard to forgive themselves. How can we forget our own mistakes? How can we let go of the pain we've caused ourselves, even if we didn't mean to? But the truth is that forgiveness is not about erasing what has happened. It's not about ignoring the consequences or the mistakes. Forgiveness is about accepting that we are human, that we are flawed, and that we can learn and grow from it. God's grace allows us to take this step. He doesn't ask us for perfection, He asks us for sincerity of heart. The problem is that if we don't forgive ourselves, we carry an immense burden that prevents us from living fully. Have you ever found yourself punishing yourself for something that happened in the past? Feeling guilty, unworthy of being happy, unworthy of being loved? I understand, for this is a deep pain that eats away at our peace. Every thought of guilt, every memory that hasn't been resolved, becomes like a chain that binds us to a place of suffering. And this suffering does not come from God. He doesn't want you to live imprisoned by what happened, but free, restored. Now, you may ask me, how can I forgive myself, Jesus, if what I did was so serious? The answer is to understand God's love. God's love can heal even the deepest wounds. He doesn't see you with the eyes of judgment, but with the eyes of compassion. He understands your pain and is willing to take you in, no matter what has happened. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable and acknowledge your mistakes, you make room for healing. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it does transform the future. It's also important to realize that when you don't forgive yourself, you're not only punishing yourself, but you're also affecting your relationships. You close yourself off to love, peace, and the new opportunities that life brings. A heart that holds a grudge, a heart that doesn't know how to forgive, cannot be a source of joy for others. And if you don't forgive yourself, you keep yourself in a cycle of self-punishment that does not allow you to experience the full freedom that God wants for you. Forgiveness is an act of freedom. It says, I don't have to carry this burden anymore. I am more than my faults. I am loved and accepted just the way I am. And when you forgive yourself, you open your heart to receive divine forgiveness, the kind that frees the soul and renews the spirit. It is this renewal that brings true peace. I know it's not easy. Forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, can seem like a challenge, something far away. But God is with you in this process. He knows how much you need healing, and He is willing to help you move in that direction. Forgiveness is something you can choose every day, and each time you choose to forgive yourself, you move closer to being the whole and healed being God has called you to be. It sounds simple, But when you forgive yourself, you begin to see life from a new perspective. You begin to see that you are in fact worthy of being happy, worthy of living in peace, and that all the mistakes you've made are just part of the journey. They don't define who you are. Your essence is much greater than the mistakes you've made. God sees you with eyes of love, and He knows your potential to grow and change. Sometimes you may ask yourself, how do I know if I've truly forgiven myself? The answer is in how your heart feels. If you still feel a weight, a sense that you don't deserve happiness, forgiveness is still a work in progress. But as you release the weight of guilt, as you look at your past with the eyes of compassion, you begin to feel a lightness. True forgiveness brings a sense of peace and acceptance. And by forgiving yourself, you allow God's love to enter your heart and transform it from within. Finally, I invite you to reflect. Have you forgiven yourself? Are the scars of the past still dominating your life, or are you ready to take the step of liberation? When you choose forgiveness, you choose the peace that God has for you, a peace that does not depend on circumstances, but on your decision to walk in the light of divine love. Now that we've reflected on the mistakes that may be holding us back, it's time to look to the future and understand how we can correct these paths and finally find true peace. The good news is that the process of transformation begins with a simple decision, the decision to stop carrying the weight of the past and to seek the true freedom that can only be found in God. Often we become so focused on how to fix the situations around us, how to change what isn't working in our lives, that we forget that true transformation begins within us. It is in our hearts that change happens, and it is there that we must look with care and compassion. God calls us to change, but this change is not something we have to force. It comes when we choose to open our hearts to Him and allow Him to lead us on the path of peace. The first thing we must do is understand that true peace does not come from external circumstances. It doesn't depend on accomplishment, approval, or recognition. True peace comes from within, from our connection with God and our acceptance of who we are, with all our flaws and strengths. When we are able to accept ourselves fully, without hiding behind pride, guilt, or fear, we find a peace that nothing can take away. This peace is not weakened by situations because it does not depend on them. It is solid, it is firm, and it is within us. Now, to correct the mistakes you've made, the first thing you need is humility. The humility to realize that we don't always have all the answers, that we need help, that we can't control everything, and that sometimes we need to stop and trust. Trust in God. Humility allows us to look at situations with eyes of wisdom and discernment. It helps us to see beyond our immediate emotions and make choices that are more in line with peace and truth. After humility comes forgiveness. True forgiveness, both for others and for ourselves, is a daily choice. You don't have to wait for the pain to go away on its own or for time to heal everything. Forgiveness is a conscious action that you choose to take in order to free your soul. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting what happened or allowing evil to continue, but it does mean letting go of resentment. When you forgive, you say, I'm not going to let this control my life. I choose to live with a light heart. Another important practice for righting these wrongs and finding peace is continuous prayer. To pray is to connect with God, to surrender your worries, anxieties, and fears to Him. Prayer is not a magic formula, but a sincere conversation with the Father. When you pray, you make room for God to work in your life, bringing clarity, strength, and direction. Prayer reminds us that we are not alone, that we have a divine power guiding and supporting us in every step we take. Did you know that gratitude also has the power to transform? When you begin to practice gratitude, your perspective on life begins to change. Instead of focusing on the difficulties and failures, you begin to see the blessings all around you. And as you do, your heart fills with joy because you realize that God's peace and love are always present, even in the most difficult moments. Furthermore, self-acceptance is one of the greatest steps toward correcting mistakes and achieving true peace. Self-acceptance is accepting your mistakes, your imperfections, and your faults without judging yourself harshly. It's not about justifying or remaining stuck in the past, but about recognizing that you are a being in constant growth, in constant transformation. You are not your mistake. You are the soul that has learned from it and is moving forward. And finally, what really brings us true peace is surrender to God. When we surrender our lives to Him, we accept that there is a greater plan, that our paths, however difficult, are guided by a divine power. To surrender is to fully trust that even in moments of pain and suffering, God is working for our good. He does not abandon us, and He is at our side, guiding us toward a future of light. True, peace is not something to be found outside of us. It is the result of a restored heart, a soul that surrenders to God's love and chooses to live according to His teachings. When you choose to live with humility, forgiveness, prayer, gratitude, self-acceptance, and surrender, you begin to realize that what you were looking for outside is already within. Peace already resides in your heart. So I invite you now, what can you do to correct these mistakes and find true peace? Where can you start dropping the weight, letting go of what is holding you back, trusting God more and forgiving yourself more? It doesn't matter where you started. What matters is where you are going. And the good news is that every step you take brings you closer to the true peace He has for you. You are no longer alone in this journey. The peace you seek is closer than you think, and it begins the moment you choose to release the weight of the past, trust in God, and forgive yourself. What you've been carrying, the pain, the mistakes, the doubts, can be left behind. The path ahead is one of freedom, and the key is in your heart. Let the divine light guide your steps. Trust that even in difficulties, He will always be by your side, transforming your life, bringing healing and renewal. May the peace that surpasses all understanding invade your soul, and may you remember every dawn. You are loved. You are strong. You are capable. May your life be filled with God's love, and may you walk with courage, faith, and a heart full of hope. May your peace be true, and may you remember that He is with you every step of the way. May it be so, and may God's unshakable peace be your guide.